And you said something about feeling stuck.
Making a commercial that is different but isn't too cheesy or in your face is a difficult task. Our friends over at Adidem Asterisk were looking to launch their winter and fall line and reached out to us to make a campaign video for it. We wanted to do something different and intentional, but coming up with an original idea was going to be a difficult challenge. In this video, I'm going to show you the exact step-by-step process on how we created this fashion film. With an initial brief and their collection, we knew that we could do something cool with it. It was very hard to get lost in the sauce when you constantly look at other people's work, and it seems impossible to come up with original ideas. When we started looking at the actual clothes from the collection, this sparked so many ideas for us in terms of what we could actually create. With names like the Therapy Pant and Picasso Print, ideas between the director, Jason, and I started to emerge. It was a very exciting process and very new to us as we had a story before we had any visual references. We built multiple worlds around each of the collection pieces and wanted to have a master scene that could guide the entire piece. The Therapy Pant inspired the therapy scene, the Picasso Print inspired the painting scene, and the Sherlock Holmes hat inspired the detective scene. From there, we started to compile a look and feel for the project and repitched it to the brand. As a cinematographer who loves to create fashion films, I knew that this project was a really good chance for me to try new things as well as push my boundaries. I wanted there to be some type of motion element in each of these scenes to keep it fresh and constantly engaging. With big sights set and a creative approved, it was time to start planning our idea. As we were in the mood to try new things, I really wanted to push the look of this project with one of the main camera and lens combinations I've always wanted to try. As this was a passion project, any money that we were going to make out of this was reinvested to it. That means we wouldn't be making any money at all. This was done by spending all that money on rentals. We shot this project on the RE Mini LF in combination with the RE Signature Primes. This combination of camera and lenses is known for its clean, contrasty, as well as filmic look. I've seen so many commercials and music videos shot on the same exact setup, and it was something I always wanted to try. In addition to that, we rented out an Optimo 25 to 250 lens for the last zoom shot that is seen in the piece. As most of the budget was spent on the camera package, we had to call in a lot of favors for grip and electric, as well as the gear needed for the camera setups. And for those exact camera setups, I'm going to explain that later on in the video. For any project to go well, a proper location scout is needed. The director Jason and I got in contact with a property just outside the city, was given for the perfect 80s look that we were interested in for this commercial. The house was in need a lot of cleanup as well as a lot of work to dress up the space. We took pictures of the entire space and then we started to plan the scenes what we wanted to shoot in each of the locations of the house. If we were to do an aerial view of the house and divide it into 4 pieces, this is where we're going to shoot the 4 of the 5 main scenes. We're basically maximizing the location for what it was. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. I used my phone and 2 filmmaking apps that I love to use, CAD Rage as well as Sunseeker. I used all the focal lengths that we were going to rent and started to shoot the angles that we intended to shoot on the day. If you put some of the pictures side by side, you will see how important it is to scout a location, so you don't have to figure out things while you're shooting. We did this for each of the locations in the house and tried as many angles as we could so we could compile them later and choose the ones that we knew that would work. With a successful scout and a lot of planning and preparation to still do, we're excited to get this project underway. Anytime you can get into a location a day early and set things up, this is one of the best things you can do when running a production. This just allows you to figure out anything that could potentially go wrong, as well as get things out of the way that could take up most of the time. This includes unloading and setting up the set decoration, cleaning and prepping the location, and testing out any camera and rigging or any specialty shots for the top of the next day. And the most important thing is setting up your lighting so you can just walk into set the next day and just turn everything on. Although we love to push ourselves in terms of creativity, we also like to respect the time and dedication everyone else puts into this project. We knew that was going to be long in terms of the shoot day, so we booked this pre-light with the internal team so we would have a 10-hour day instead of a 16-hour day on the actual day of the shoot. My gaffer, the director, and I started blacking out some rooms that we knew that we didn't want any ambient light in. While that was happening, the production designer and her assistant started prepping the main therapy room. This is a great opportunity to start walking through the day and how it was going to look like with my gaffer, so I knew exactly what fixtures I wanted in each room at what specific time. In addition to that, the director and I ran through the blocking of each scene and rearranged the schedule based on how we were feeling about each of the setups. And the way we organized that was through a fantastic resource we use for every project, which is Milanote. We have everything here in terms of the original deck as well as the deck we made. And the main thing that I'm going to be looking at in this process was the shot listing. In this board, we have the props and location for each of the scenes and where we're going to be shooting it in terms of the pictures that we took on the scout, as well as some references that we were really liking. And then from there, I really like to break down in terms of a direction and shot list for myself in terms of what scene will play out and then how we can organize it. And Milanote is fantastic in terms of laying out all these references, and I can look at this board and understand what's going on. We have our scene one going through all the shots exactly in that scene, and then I can draw in terms of references in terms of how are these supposed to look. My scene two, scene three, and then the rest of them. But the main thing is that I couldn't shoot this in actual order because this wouldn't make sense. I would set up each scene in terms of lighting and then direction, and then shoot that and then move on to the next room, and so we can get organized and move as fast as possible. And then another thing I love about Milanote is putting your documents inside. We had a shot list that we made after this. I can just simply click on that and it takes me to the new tab, and then I can actually go over what we are going to be looking at on the day. And this is just a fantastic resource we love to use for every project. If you're interested in signing up for Milanote, use the link in the description to find out more. With the house all set up the best we could and excited to get to the day of production underway, it was time to execute everything that we planned on.
One out for takeaway.
The start of any production day can feel very intimidating as well as stressful. But with all the work that we put in so far in terms of the pre-production as well as pre-light, we're feeling pretty confident. With an early call time, everyone arrived on location and we started to set up and load in the rest of the equipment and set up for the first shot of the day. A question that you might have at this point is, what order do you shoot things in? Do you shoot it in terms of how the edit will look, the difficulty of the setups, or something completely different? I always shoot my most difficult scene first in terms of camera movements, lighting, actor blocking, as well as direction. For this project specifically, this was the therapy scene. We shot listed this based off the conversation the two had, and then I reorganized it to start off with the wides first, then move in for the mediums, and then finally finish off with the tights as well as inserts. This first shot of the day was a wide push in, and to achieve a dolly shot like this that you don't see the floor, an inverted T-bar setup was used. This is a setup I use all the time, and if you're actually interested in terms of a full breakdown about this setup, let us know in the comments below. From there, we captured some of the other wides that included a high angle as well as some other coverage. This scene was heavily on dialogue and was the backbone of the piece, so we focused on getting as many shots as we could while keeping continuity in mind. There are a lot of new things that I tried, including a whip pan shot between a conversation, as well as an in-camera zoom for the last and final shot. From there, we moved on to the detective scene, which I was most excited for. We set up from the main hero shot, and we like to call it this because it is our favorite shot of the piece. This was done with a cine slider that was supported on an angle plate as well as a lot of sandbags. This movement heavily relied on timing as well as the ability to keep the camera still. What I find is that the operator has to get into a flow with the talent in terms of matching their speed as well as where to stop. We moved on to my personal favorite shot in the piece, which was the magnifying glass attached to the camera. I simply used a friction arm that was attached to one of the rods on the camera and held it close to my body. It's always important to push your limits in terms of getting the most creative shots in any piece. We like to add specialty shots to every piece that we do, and sometimes in every scene in that piece. This just helps immerse the viewer even more from a watching experience to actually feeling that you're in the commercial. To wrap the scene up, we shot another overhead dolly to reveal what he was working on, as well as some inserts of the newspaper itself. At this point, we break for lunch, and it was one of the hottest days in the summer. With temperatures around 35 degrees Celsius and the house with no AC, everyone on set was exhausted. We still had 3 more scenes to shoot and wanted to wrap on time, so the pressure was on. We set up in another corner of the house to shoot the Picasso scene, where our main talent was painting and placing the painting on the wall. The house we were shooting in was not well kept, so we had to do a lot of cheating with our camera angles not to show too much. When we shot him placing the painting on the wall, we did not have the budget to print vinyl for each of the canvases we used, so we had our set deck place tracking markers on the rest of them. We did this so the VFX artist could apply that same pattern to the rest of the canvases that were on the wall. At this point, we were moving like a well-oiled machine, and we moved on to our next and second last scene of the day, which was the stereo scene. This was pretty straightforward, as well as got inserts of the stereo system and our talent in the chair. The toughest part about this was getting the right talent blocking in terms of the reaction of the wind blowing effect. On hindsight, we should have used a much powerful leaf blower on set, but we still got it done. Now, the last scene in practicality seems easy to pull off, but it was actually a logistical nightmare in terms of how wide the shot was, as well as we had to shoot at multiple locations over the property. This meant that an entire background needed to be cleared as well as dressed. You could tell that everyone was exhausted but determined to get what we needed. We pushed forward and set up for the last shot as the sun was setting in the front of the property. And that was a wrap on this fashion commercial. The biggest thing I learned from this commercial was try new things. A lot of work that I do is montage based, and I usually set up a scene, shoot the coverage, and then figure out the rest in the edit later. This fashion film was very intentional and very purposeful in terms of how each scene was laid out, and there was a specific cut that actually had to happen. So I had to be intentional with how the camera movements felt, how transitions felt, how the dialogue between actors felt as well. And this was very new to me as a cinematographer, and something that I've always wanted to try. It was very difficult in terms of the pre-production process to plan all this out and to get the idea as well as in my head. Me coming from an editing background and liking to edit projects, especially getting into projects like this, I already have that knowledge in my head in terms of how things are going to look and how inserts need to play a heavy role in this. There are a lot of inserts that we could have got in each scene in terms of like clocks ticking or other things like that. And these are shots that we necessarily missed because we didn't really have enough time. We pushed this to our limits in terms of the time, location, camera package, camera setups, and everything like that. And realistically, if you were to do this in a more professional environment in terms of not shooting a spec commercial, but getting a bunch of people, talented individuals together, this would be a 2 to 3 day commercial, but we only had one. And it's allocating and pushing everything to as much as you can do, and then taking that and learning from it in terms of everything else. I learned so many things that I'm actually applying to my commercials that I shoot today in terms of camera movements, feeling, dialogue, and being very intentional with my work. And this is the world that I want to move in. I kind of want to move away from montage commercials and get into actually scripting and narrative work in terms of driving a story forward. So these are interesting things that I learned on this, and I hope that they help when planning your next film or even a fashion film similar to this. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more cinematic breakdowns where I actually break down lighting diagrams in terms of how you can achieve these looks, I have a video queued up here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.